Hi and good morning, everybody. We're going to get started here in just a minute. Appreciate everybody coming out this morning. I know it's freezing cold. I appreciate you braving the cold to come join us. We're going to get started with our keynote speaker here in just a moment. If you want to come on out and join us, great. If you want to stay in the back, hopefully you can hear right now. You can stay in the back, whatever's more comfortable for you. And then when Dr. Hannon finishes his remarks, we'll go back to have some more time. We'll have some additional reflection questions as we do now on the screen. We'll have more time to meet with all of our special guest vendors who are here, and we'll have some food to end the day as well. So without further ado, I'm going to heavily rely on notes because I am an anxious public speaker, and introduce Dr. Michael Hannon, who holds many identities as a man, a husband, a father, who also happens to be a counselor, not unlike myself, a professor, and an author. His personal and professional roles inspire his community to work unapologetically to advocate for the well-being specifically of Black fathers and father figures, particularly fathers of autistic people. As a counselor and educator, Dr. Hannon is associate professor at the beautiful, I got to visit recently, beautiful Montclair State University, where he teaches in the counseling program to prepare counselors to serve clients in educational and community settings. As a researcher, Dr. Hannon's expertise about the Black father's wellness is frequently requested. He has been featured in national outlets including NPR, New York Times, Autism Speaks, Thrive Global, Huffington Post, Waymaker Journal, and Black Enterprise Magazine. His research has been cited over 700 times, which as an aspiring researcher myself, I would tell you is very impressive. His edited books, The Black Fathering and Mental Health, was published by Peter Lang Academic Publishers in March 2022, and his second book, Protect, Provide, Prepare, Black Fatherhood Code in Family and Community, will be published in, or I guess was published in 2025? Nope, still pending. Okay, wanted to make sure I was up to date. So I personally, so I'm going to put the notes away for a second. I've had the great opportunity to see Dr. Hannon speak several times over the past few years at different conferences, which is why I was so excited to have him join here this morning. So I really can't wait for him to share his thoughts with us. So without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Michael Hannon.
Cool. Test, can you hear me? If you can hear me, give me a thumbs up. I can't hear mine. It's great to be with you today. I want to start by just acknowledging the moment that we're in. It's a stressful time. And places like Haddonfield United Methodist Church, like many places of worship, are here to provide a sense of solace, a sense of safety, protection, from the things that are happening in and around our world. So I just want to take a moment and acknowledge that for those of us who are neurodivergent or are in community with neurodivergent people, that from the federal government, we are receiving consistent messages about the pathology of neurodivergence, but we're here in community to celebrate the beauty and the benefit of neurodivergence. And so I just want to make sure we say that, we own it, and begin in that regard. I need to say amen and ashe, right? Like, and feel free to respond to the things that I'm saying as you're inclined. So I'll say a couple of things. First, I need to start with just by expressing my gratitude to Dr. Phil. No shade. No shade, Dr. Phil Fizzer, who I've had a chance to get to know over the last few months, and inviting me to spend some time with you and be in community with you today. I need to acknowledge Laura Gaffney, who's helped coordinate and share promotional materials. I see you waving in the back. For promotional materials, and just like the hospitality that I experienced and getting connected to this community and space of worship, house of worship. So please accept my gratitude for that. Like Phil said, I'm a professor at Montclair State University. This is year 12 for me there. But before that, and since becoming a professor, I've been practicing as a counselor for over 20 years. I started in student affairs, working with students in higher education, and then I moved into school counseling, where I was a school counselor in our capital city in Trenton for several years. And then my family was supportive enough to allow me to go back to school and earn my doctoral degree in counselor education. And so now I'm an educator of counselors, or that's what they say anyway. It's been good for me to both be an educator, but also still practice. So I run a very small private practice that provides telemental health services for primarily Black and Latino boys, adolescents, and men, some of whom are autistic themselves, and I've been doing that certainly for the last 5 years. Let me share a few things with you. Does that work? Okay, bet. I'm getting adjusted to the technology, so if I seem a little tentative, just know that that's me working through my own anxiety, but also just becoming more and more familiar. Certainly important to share extended gratitude. I want to make sure I speak my wife's name, LaShawn Hannon, who's also doctorally trained. She has her PhD in teacher education and teacher development. But she is literally, when people talk about your spouse or your partner being your better half, like she's my better half was a person, right? Like she brings out the best of me. I benefit from her guidance, her insight, her convictions, her support, her wisdom, and so I want to make sure I say her name. I have 2 adult children. Phil's been listening to me. The AV team has been listening to me share a little bit about my kids, and you'll hear a little bit more about my personal journey, my personal autism journey as I get into my remarks. But my daughter, Niall Joyce, is 23. We're celebrating 2 years out of college, which is wild to me. My wife and I have been married for 25 years, or 26 this August. But Niall graduated from Montclair State University in spring 24, and it's been really, really valuable to see her at this point in her development. For those of you who are parents or caregivers, and when you have the privilege of seeing your children move into their adulthood and make wise decisions and get their feet under them, it's really been a pleasure of mine. And now she's a teacher in Trenton, working out Foundations Charter School, helping nurture children's love for science, right? So she's in a classroom with multilingual Black and brown students in our capital city, and we know how important it is for children to develop a sense of confidence and agency with science and mathematics, and she's doing that now, so I'm super proud of her. And our son, Avery, who is a senior now at Temple University and will be graduating this spring with a Bachelor of Fine Arts in Musical Theater. Now, he would say he's in Act 8, not Semester 8. He would say he's in Act 8 as a theater guy. But I would tell you, for those of you who ascribe to any faith, I imagine many of you in here identify as Christian folks, I would submit to you that finding music and movement for our son was a miracle, right? Something that we can't explain empirically, but is actually supernatural. And so for him, music and movement literally changed the trajectory of his life. And I'm here to tell you my gratitude and express my gratitude for him. To you in the Haddonfield United Methodist Church, I want to express my gratitude. And to everybody who's not just here face-to-face, but those of you who may be online, shout out to y'all as well. Glad that you're here and braving, as Phil said, the cold or the comfort of your home, possibly, to spend some time together. These are some of the folks I just talked about. When Avery was 21 months, he's now 21 years old. He'll be 22 in August. Avery was identified at 21 months with pervasive developmental disorder, not otherwise specified. PDD and OAs. Put your hand in the air if you know exactly what that is or have heard of it or how they used to describe the criteria and the range of conditions along the autism spectrum. And at that time in our lives, it was a tough time, but he was identified at 21 months. And this image right here was on a day we were at Sesame Place. Now, Phil told you I work at Montclair State University, but I live right here. I'm a South Jersey guy. I'm from Willingboro. I live in Burlington City, and I commute to Montclair 3 days a week. So we home. I'm home in the greater Philly region. And on this particular day, we're at Sesame Place. Some of y'all may remember this. Sesame Place has a day designated for families who are living on the autism spectrum. Does that sound familiar to anybody in here? So on this day, we're at Sesame Place, and Avery's in the pool with his older sister at that point in time, stimming. And for those of you who may not know what that means, I imagine most of you do, but that's literally him trying to regulate his nervous system based on the sensory input, and he's trying to make sense of his world. The water may have been cold, he may have had a breeze coming through that kind of shook him up and made him shiver, but whatever the reason was, he was stimming in that pool that day. But thankfully that day, as I saw on the prompts earlier, that day is what something my wife calls was a day of no apologies. So for the parents and caregivers and those of us in community with neurodivergent people, we spend so much time explaining away our children's and our loved ones' condition that we may often feel inclined to apologize. Oh, here we go. Y'all might have to help me, Aiden. Spending time explaining away our children's conditions because people don't appreciate, value, see, hear, acknowledge our children as humane, right? Our family members as humane. Somebody said earlier, we don't know your role, Aiden. I said, no, he's the real MVP. His role is MVP, most valuable player, right? Day of no apologies. The day that you and I can go into spaces with our children, our loved ones who may be neurodivergent, or may just present in ways that make people uncomfortable. It don't make me uncomfortable. That's your discomfort speaking. And we say, I'm not apologizing for anything. And being in spaces where you're validated. I've heard people say, I heard my wife say before, that people, no matter the identities we have, people are only as disabled as systems make them. Listen to what I'm saying to you. That if I work in an educational setting and there are no pathways to get into the building that go beyond steps, that I'm disabling people. If we don't make things available by transcript, when we're having communication or having verbal communication, then we are literally disabling people who may have hearing impairments. And so whether you or your family members identify as disabled, that's your choice, right? But systems, churches, schools, institutions have a responsibility to stop disabling people and see them as humane. And see them and hear them and value them. So on this particular day, Avery's stimming, and we're not feeling the judgment and the stigma that many of us feel at times when we feel like we're being judged or stigmatized as a result of our children's behavior or things that we quite frankly don't want, nor should we need to explain based on somebody else's discomfort. But on this day, a few years later, when LaShawn is my wife, when LaShawn agreed, and we agreed that I could go back to Penn State, not this time as an employee, but as a doctoral student. I'd been working 10 years as a school counselor. And upon Avery's identification of being autistic, a light went off, just like for many of you. And there's research that I've done and published, and there's research that a bunch of people have done over time that talks about the influence of a diagnosis on caregivers. And how for many caregivers, because there's such a dearth of services and there's so many barriers to services and support, that it literally changes their career trajectory. I was a business person, but you know what? Now I'm an advocate. There's a brother in here that I've known literally for the last six or 7 years. His name is Jamil Owens. He will tell you, you will not find, I will tell you, he won't tell you, you won't find a father and father figure more vocal, active and visible in the autism community than Jamil, right? But it literally changed his career trajectory. I'm shouting you out, right? It literally changed his career trajectory. He's a civil servant. He does EMT work. He's a firefighter. He's all the things. He's the jack of all trades, master of them all. But when he learned he had to support his son in ways that he didn't imagine, it changed his career. Happens for many of us. Same for me. I was a school counselor. I'm thinking, hey, I do want to get a doctoral degree, but I want to go and learn about students' pathways to college. Autism is introduced and is new lexicon in our home. And I say, wait a minute, I'm watching Nile in her nonverbal behavior feel frustrated and guilty because her brother won't talk to her. Because at that point in time, he had very limited expressive language or was non-speaking, probably until close to 4 years old. And so for us, we made the move to go, and on this particular day, Avery's probably about 6. He's in first grade. It's in our first year back. We spent 2 years at Penn State when I was a student. It's our first year there. And unbeknownst to us, hindsight's always 20/20, Avery had probably been coping and masking all day. Who here has experiences with masking? Masking meaning I can't be my full, true self outside of a space, so I got to go put on some airs to make sure I stay safe in a different space. Our children at 5 and 6 and 7 and 10 and 12 and all of us grown people out here, we mask. So imagine what it means for a child to have to do that all day. They're getting messages that their behavior is inappropriate when I'm really just trying to regulate. I'm trying not to run across this room, so if this is offensive to you, imagine what happens if I run across the room. So on this day, Avery comes home. Immediately, I called it a tantrum, and that was the wrong language. He wasn't having a tantrum. This brother needed proximity. He needed physical touch, right? And this video I'm going to play for you, I'm telling you it may be jarring because you're going to listen to him without words communicate how much he needed his mother and me. And you're going to see us, as much as it pains me to play this, you're going to see us respond in ways that were inappropriate. So I'm about to be real vulnerable. Don't judge me. We're going to see if we get this to work. Hold on. Oh, you know what? Here it is. Maybe this is it. LaShawn barricaded herself in the bathroom. And I was on the outside of that bathroom door trying to restrain Avery. His nonverbals were telling us that he needed a hug. But in that part of our parenthood journey, we weren't translating, right? There are often times in the things that I've learned from fathers of autistic people over the last 12 or 13 years since I earned my doctoral degree and began on my own journey to learn more about this for myself and for the community of fathers and father figures, that many parents and caregivers of neurodivergent people, particularly those who are non-speaking, we are required to learn two different languages: the language of our children and the language that we were taught to speak. And on this day was an entirely inaccurate translation. And it was painful, and it was stressful, and I still carry some guilt with this and not responding in ways that Avery needed and deserved in that moment. And so, as I thought about what might be useful to share with our community today, I wanted to offer at least 3 or 4 ways that I've found hope along my journey as the father of an autistic person and being in community with neurodivergent people, and not speaking for them, not gaslighting their experiences, but actually being the right kind of help. What does it mean for us to be in community with people who have different identities and be the right kind of help, different identities from us, and be the right kind of help? We often say this in my house. It's a running joke. There was a time when our kids were younger, and I imagine like many of you, you have younger children or younger people in your lives, and they do chores around the house. And we would joke because when somebody wouldn't do the dishes well, or we would still find residue of food on the dishes, or somebody didn't sweep the floor well, or didn't clean the bathroom well, we say, "Man, you the wrong kind of help," because it's just not a good job. But then when we really began to interrogate that, we said, what would it mean to be the right kind of help? Have you asked the neurodivergent people in your lives how to be the right kind of help? If you have asked, have you sat down and listened well enough to be able to give them back what they've told you about being the right kind of help? Have you been patient enough that if they don't have an answer right away, that we are willing to circle back and ask again and again in the humblest of ways? What does the right kind of help look like? It may mean us shutting up. It may mean stop speaking for people. It certainly means nothing about us without us. It's easy for us who have been privileged in whatever way, whether you're able-bodied, whether you got a whole lot of bread, a lot of money, whether you speak English or maybe you speak multiple languages. There are so many ways that we have been privileged. Many of us have been privileged that sometimes we have to say, listen, I'm going to step back and stop assuming I know the answer to the questions and let the people who know the answer to the questions answer, and not be so arrogant so that I can be a good listener and learn to be the right kind of help. So these 3 ways I'm offering, how did and do I find hope? Because the world can be an ugly place. It can be a mean place. There's opportunities for it to be affirming and beautiful. But if we're courageous enough to be honest right now, I understand if you feel pretty discouraged. I understand if you would actually say, I don't have hope right now. Some of the ways that I've find and continue to find hope is in faith. I grew up in a Christian church. I was telling the AV team, my dad is a retired pastor, Christian Nazarene pastor, for 15 years after working a corporate job for years. And these are some of the passages, biblical passages, and I'm not exalting any one faith tradition over another, right? Faith, for many people, can be a protective factor. Those of you who work in behavioral mental health, you know what protective factors are. They are the things in our lives that reduce the chances of experiencing psychological distress. And for faith, with faith, many times, faith functions as a protective factor. What I'll say is, as a person whose Christian identity has evolved over time, I would tell you that I'm working to become deeper in my faith and confronting things in the Christian traditions that are present in many spaces. Maybe not here, I don't make any judgment, but being able to confront things like systemic oppression against people of color in the church, in the Christian church, systemic oppression against queer people in the church, right? So these are some of my own kinds of toiling and work that I have to do spiritually and psychologically. But these particular passages, now unto him who is able to do exceedingly and abundantly above all we could ask or think, according to the godly divine power working within us. For those of us who claim any faith, do we believe that there is a godly power working within our neurodivergent family and friends? Or do we act like that they are in such need that it doesn't exist? How privileged is that? Do we believe, like in the book of Philippians where it reads, and I'm confident, I'm certain that God who began the good work in your son, in your daughter, in your cousin, in your aunt, will continue until it is finally finished? Or do we get so consumed with a disabling world that we actually begin to subscribe to the disabling messages? And I'm just asking us to be honest, right? Like, no judgment. This is the journey. This is the journey. So I'm not so naive to sit up here and suggest, or arrogant for that matter, to suggest that we don't have low moments. I'm a whole clinical mental health therapist. I see clients at least 7 times a week, and I'm in therapy myself. And I teach people how to be counselors. The Christian church often cites this Isaiah 55:3 scripture that reads, as you can see, but he was wounded for our transgressions. He was bruised for our iniquities, and by his stripes we are healed. And that's a powerful, powerful scripture. Prophetic, right? In the book of Isaiah. I want to be transparent with you for a second. That there was a time in my life when reading that scripture along my family's autism journey and trying to be the right kind of help for my son, my black son, that I believed that Avery needed to be healed. When in fact, Michael's perspectives about autism needed to be healed. My son ain't broke. Your children ain't broke. Your children are beautifully and wonderfully, you know it now, right? You know the scripture. That's it. When will we begin to subscribe, adopt, live out the beauty in our children and in our neurodiverse community, instead of continuing to digest and then regurgitate the disabling messages that they hear and we hear all the time, right? It's literally an entire unlearning. It's an entire unlearning. So finding hope rather in my faith has been transformative, right? And ongoing. Right? It ain't no one destination. It's ongoing. Secondly, I found hope in community. Now, I'll tell you, I've been a counselor for over 20 years, worked in higher education, K-12. I've been doing clinical mental health counseling. I'm a fully licensed counselor. I got certifications, a whole bunch of alphabet soup behind my name. At the end of the day, I'm Mike or Michael. That's my mom called me Mike. My parents named me Michael. And I'm privileged in many ways. But I have a huge safety net in my community, right? And for those of us who may be autistic or neurodivergent in other ways, or are in community with people who are neurodivergent, I'm telling you, the things that I've learned, researching, investigating, scientifically asking, collecting data, father figures and people at large, caregivers of autistic people, people in community with autistic people and neurodivergent people, need community. Need it. I don't care what kind of messages you got as a kid that said, you by yourself, these individualistic kind of like, I'm solo, I can do things on my own. That's a whole lie. It's a lie. We're wired for community. Why do we come to church? You know why? Because we're wired for community. Why do we do work in the community together? You know why? Because we're wired in community. Why do we protest injustice? You know why? Because we're wired for community. We're wired for community, like biologically, physiologically, need connection, need intimacy, need to be seen, need to be heard, need to be valued. And I've benefited from community, right? I got a community of privileged to be able to go to college and earn a few degrees, right? So I got college friend. I'm a member of a historically black fraternity. Got a bunch of fraternity brothers who love and care for me in ways that I need and deserve. But for those of you on a neurodivergent journey, I'm telling you, this flyer right here in the middle and these pictures of us being in Zoom or in person, in 2019, Robert Nassif, who was here last year, I believe, invited me to partner with him to go on this journey to host a support group for fathers and father figures of autistic people. It's 7 years later, and these dudes get together every month on the third Saturday from all across the country and in some places internationally. You know what they say to us? They say, this is the first time anybody's ever spoken my language. It's another time to be in a space for it to be a day of no apologies. And this is the community. This is one community that has provided a deep value for me. And if you're not in community with other people who have a shared experience or a shared identity, I encourage you to do so. It's life-changing and powerful. And this gives me hope in ways I can't express, and I'm grateful for everyone who shows up on a weekly basis. And as a consequence, as an outgrowth of this work and the wonderful work people like Jamil Owens is doing beyond this, there's a Autism Fathers and Caregivers Conference that's emerged, right? And he's got material about it in the back at his vending table. But in late March, we going to Wilmington. Jamil has hosted it in Philly. He's hosted it in suburban Philadelphia. And now we're going to be in Wilmington this spring. And if you have fathers or father figures who need community, tell them to come. Tell them to come. Even if it makes them angry. Even if you get resistance. Community has given me hope as well. So I found hope in faith. Found hope in my faith. Found hope in community. And this third way is finding hope in family. This is an example of finding hope in family because this is Avery, that same academic year. And I told you that when he found music and movement, there was a point in time, Avery's wired in a way And he presents in a way that his memory is outstanding. Outstanding. And so because he is nimble and agile, the boy could dance. Like, he could move, pick up choreography super fast, which is why music and movement was so helpful. It literally helped him regulate his nervous system. He did taekwondo for a little while, and that helped with the sensory input. But this was gold for us and for him. Like, now we're actually being the right kind of help. And we've begun to use language in a dad's group. And my wife and I wrote an article about 2 years ago about we were invited to address and write a journal article. I mean, that's usually not for wide consumption. People, they might fall asleep reading it. And that's cool. But the person who asked us to write the article asked us to specifically talk about the ways that we fostered Black autistic joy. Listen to what I'm asking you. We ain't all Black, right? But my racial identity is important to me. I imagine your racial identity is important to you. There are things that you do that are different from things other people do strictly as a consequence of your racial identity. The food you eat, the way you talk, the music you listen to, and that's all good. For us, we wanted to nurture Black autistic joy. We've used this language. I got the language from a colleague of mine, Renee Mays, who's a professor, a counseling professor out in Arizona. Super, super smart. She said, hey, Mike, can you and your wife write a paper in this journal, this special issue journal, about how you fostered Black autistic joy in your family system? I said, say less. Of course we can. Of course we can. But she gave us that language, and then and then I took the language to our dad's group, and I was like, yo, what brings your autistic children joy? Joy. Where and in what ways do they find joy in their lived experience? And this, what I'm about to share with you, if I can get the technology to work right, is one example of Avery finding and experiencing autistic joy. He used to literally teach dance classes with my wife as a Zumba instructor. And when he began to have expressive language, he would literally be correcting people with the choreography because he would be a bit impatient. And we're like, hey, man, it's an exercise class, bro. Like, you need to chill. They're exercising. They're not dancing for performance. They're dancing for cardio. Like, knock it off, man. This is him. If you are a fan of soul music, largely out of the Black American tradition, gospel, R&B, this is Avery dancing spontaneously, extemporaneously to Donny Hathaway. A live performance of a song called The Ghetto, right? And Donny Hathaway's, there's an instrumentation moment, and Avery heard it, came downstairs in his bathrobe from after getting out of the tub. And this, if we can get it, is what he did. Is that able to play? Cool. Yep. So it's one of the moments when Avery's joy gave me hope, and at times it's literally yielded tears for me. But whether we can or can't get it to play, you get the point I'm making, right? Making sure we're intentional enough to ask, engage, harness the courage to find out what yields autistic joy, neurodivergent joy, and doing the things and creating the environments and providing the opportunities so that our loved ones can experience it unapologetically. We all deserve to experience joy, right? We all deserve it. And there's no one less deserving. There are no group of folks less deserving than people who have been pushed to the margins because of their identities. Neurodivergent people being one of those groups, autistic people being one of those groups. I found hope in family. What I'll say about this as I begin to wrap up my remarks. Found hope in family. Hope is a tricky thing because when we access it, when we're able to access it, it gives us inspiration. When you are hopeful, right? I've sat with clients who believe that they have no reason to be hopeful. You could be in this moment right here on this day in the year of our Lord, 2026, and not have hope. That's legit. There are people who are dealing with psychological conditions that prompt them to think that they should not be hopeful. But when you have hope, a sliver of it, it provides inspiration. And when you're inspired, you believe now you have the agency to do a thing. Hope gives us expectation, right? When you're hopeful, you expect the positive outcome. You expect it to yield what you aspire for it to yield. Hope gives us ambition. I now have motivation and ambition because I'm hopeful for a particular outcome. Hope gives us a plan. Hope gives us a plan. Do you remember the first time you found a developmental pediatrician who actually had the bedside manner and was a good listener, who would acknowledge your needs and acknowledge your concerns? Those are the kinds of things that make us feel hopeful and gives us a plan. Hope gives us joy. I have something for which to look forward. And hope gives us life. Without hope, maybe another way to say it is, without hope, our lives are not as meaningful. And I'm here to remind you, if you haven't heard it yet, that the neurodivergent people in your lives and the neurodivergent people here today are a source of hope for you and for me, if we'll allow it, right? If we'll allow it. Now, I ain't no pastor, but my daddy is. And to the extent you're able, I'm going to ask you to stand. I'm not giving a benediction, I promise. Some of you may be familiar with the poet Gil Scott Heron. Gil Scott Heron was what is termed a griot, a storyteller in black communities across the diaspora. And he wrote this poem that was performed on an album called Peace Be Unto You, Brother. And I'm going to ask you to do a call and response. We do this, I've done this with students in higher education when I worked in student services. I use it very frequently to affirm the community that we need to build and continue building. So just repeat after me. Now, more than ever, all the brothers and sisters must come together. All the brothers and sisters everywhere must feel the time is in the air. Common blood flows through common veins, and common eyes all see the same. Now, more than ever, all the brothers and sisters must come together. Ashe. You can be seated. Ashe is literally a Swahili word that means the same thing as amen. It means I'm in agreement, right? Ashe. It's so critical for us to be in community and be the right kind of help and find hope along our journeys. I am Michael Damon Hannon from Willingboro, New Jersey. I'm the husband to LaShawn Vernay Hannon and the father to Niall Joyce Marcel and Avery Mackay Hannon. And among the Hannon men, I'm the son of the Right Reverend Byron Les Hannon, who is the son of Lafayette Hannon, who was the son of Claude Hannon, who was the son of John Hannon, who was the son of Green Hannon, who was the son of Lucinda Hannon, who was enslaved. I and we are our ancestors' wildest dreams and revolutionary prayers. Thank you for your time today.
I just wanted to take a moment to say thank you. I'm Pastor Cricket, pastor of Student and Mission Ministries here at Haddonfield United Methodist Church. As a mother of a child on the spectrum, you had us crying back there. You really spoke to our hearts, so thank you so much.
You're so welcome. Thank you for having me.
It's a pleasure to have you. I just wanted to take this opportunity to invite everyone to our worship service tomorrow. We are celebrating Diversibility Sunday. If you happen to want to get here early, you get stuck with me as your preacher. But if you come to the 9 o'clock or the 10:30 worship service, Reverend Jeff Bills will be speaking. Jeff is legally blind. He's bringing puppies from the seeing eye. He will be much better than me. So it's a celebration of people of all abilities who learn differently and who are beautiful in their own way.
So real quick before we transition, I'm going to get yelled at. I started talking before I got to the stage. Sorry, guys. Before we transition back to the back, I want everybody connecting with all of our vendors again. We have food. We're going to bring out lunch in a little bit. And while we do that, I'm going to put some reflection questions on the screen. But I also noticed that there were a couple of hands up throughout the presentation. Dr. Hannon, might I impose upon you to come on back up? For the folks who had questions or comments, can you raise your hand again? I'm going to bring a microphone around to you. Okay. So I'll hear her hand first, and then I'll come right back to you. Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you. That was an incredible presentation. Thank you so much.
Thank
but
you.
As you were talking, I was thinking to myself, I've been in this field for 40 years. And as I started in the 80s, individuals didn't have any rights at all. So I just want everyone to realize that we have gotten a little bit further.
Mm-hmm.
But my question to you is about language. Not the verbal, the nonverbal, the body language. How have you studied that? For me, learning the language of an individual has been key for me to kind of connect to them and find a way to bring their joy. So the way I bring joy to individuals is through pottery and arts and expression. So I've been doing that for the whole time. And I find that if I could find the right tool or something that's gonna, like your son with the music and movement, but finding that key when they're younger, how do we do that? How do we find those languages? Maybe it will be through computers, but your experience.
Sure. I appreciate the question. Thank you. How have I found language? How do we do it? And we're all smart enough to know, like, there's no magic bullet answer. I think what it requires, we won't find it unless we stay curious. So even if we think about our relationships in which it may be easier to communicate in ways that are comfortable for us, that can be challenging. But for those who we care about, I think about, when I'm in conflict with my wife or conflict with a close friend, I have to be willing to interrogate how committed I am to the thing. My best friend, I talk to him all the time. His name is Adrian. If Adrian and I are having a disagreement, and we rarely do, but when we have a disagreement, it's just like, if I believe that I'm absolutely right, then I make a decision. I have to make a conscious decision, and we have to make conscious decisions to stay curious. What motivates you may differ. For me, I ask myself, is it worth it? Is this conflict worth more than me finding out what is the rupture, what caused the rupture? And so finding the language, finding the tools, finding the connection point requires us as parents, caregivers, and people in community with folks who may be different from us to remain curious, remain committed to that curiosity, because our privilege will say, I don't have to do it anymore, right? That's when privilege starts talking. I don't have to sit at the table and tolerate this. I don't have to learn a new language. Everybody else in my circle of friends and community, they speak the language I speak. And so it requires us to remain curious and in many ways to distance ourselves from the privilege of our comfort. So I don't know if that makes sense. Hopefully that's helpful, and I appreciate the question.
Thank you so much. And we have another question over
Sure.
here.
Thank you. So my sort of question is sort of two-part. We have a son who has autism and a daughter who has CP. And my son with autism is verbal, but I feel like kids who are verbal have meltdowns too.
Oh, yeah.
And so I think like it's important to sort of acknowledge that parents, you know, who are raising all neuroabilities have experienced meltdown. And I guess my question is, as a mom, I know mom guilt, right? But I drag my husband here so he can learn more. Can you talk more about like the guilt you spoke about from a father's perspective and how to support as wives, as mothers, and all those things men?
Yeah, sure. I'll do my best. And I appreciate the question. And to your point, it's well taken. We all have temper tantrums. We all have meltdowns, right? It's also important to remember that all behavior communicates. You know, people in behavioral mental health, they know that. Teachers who know that. People who work in social services or human services, they understand that intellectually and they see it play out. But sometimes we have to be reminded that all behavior communicates something. Avoidant behavior communicates something. Anxious behavior communicates something. So I think to your specific question about the guilt that I carried, what I learned over time, and this is akin to my own experience, is that when I don't know something, I dive into a rabbit hole to try to learn everything I can about it, right? And so learning about what autism was, the range of the ways it presents, and learning about it. But until I began to move more toward acceptance than correction, I carry guilt because I wouldn't see progress, because progress is a whole social construction. Progress is relative. So it was diving into and learning about the condition, what it was. And some of the things that I found, and there's some evidence to possibly suggest this, is that there's a relationship between father's age and the likelihood of an autistic condition. And so there's some research that points to the older the age of the father, right? So now it's like, oh, this is my fault, right? And carrying that. And how does that show up in interactions? How does that show up in my mood? How does it show up in the ways that I engage with people outside of my home? And so for me, the transformation was about acceptance and not, I can't find the word. It was about acceptance and not trying to cure, right? There's so many dads who I've talked to over time who talked about investing money in trials and maybe not so good science to cure their children of the condition, when there are those of us who believe and have come to believe over time that being neurodivergent is another wonderful form of diversity in humanity. So those are some of the things that I wrestle with personally and continue to carry at times, because across milestones, you think about different things. When my kid was going to school, I got a certain set of concerns. When they joined the soccer team, I had a certain set of concerns. Now when he went to college, I had a certain set of concerns. Now he's about to graduate. And I keep pointing out Jamil. Jamil's heard me say this in our group. I'm like, I ain't ready for him to stay in Philly. Like, he got to come home. But that's my fear. Like, that's my fear talking. And people said, people who love me the most, they'll say, hey, man, that's your fear talking, bro. So those are ways that I continue to try to interrogate it and work through it and acknowledge it, sometimes better than others. So sorry for that long answer, but thanks for the question. I thought I saw a question over here. Oh, and there's one there. Yep.
Okay. I was born in Camden in 1946. I'm old. And
Okay.
I lived there for a while. When we saw an autistic kid, this was the phrase we used: he's not right.
Mm-hmm.
How do we get older people to see that that phrase isn't right?
Right.
I
The
mean,
phrase ain't right.
I hung with Phil's son Philip for 2 years while they were practicing in the band. And Philip was right. But how do we get that phrase out of their minds, out of old people's minds?
Yeah, the thing sometimes that comes with age is stubbornness, right? We can all be stubborn, but sometimes with age and experience comes wisdom, absolute wisdom, and sometimes there's some stubbornness. How to do it, I'm not quite sure. Ways that you can address it and we can continue to address it is to call it in or call it out. Like, hey, like, knock that off, or you're not going to talk about that. I mean, depending on how confrontational you are, and all confrontation doesn't have to be bad, but certainly correction. Hey, but I appreciate if you didn't use that language here. That's not the way we refer to autistic people. Please refrain from using that language. And you, depending on how severe you want the consequence, will determine how frequently you do it, because the person who is on the receiving end of the correction, they may say, I'm going to do whatever I want, or they just may distance themselves. But the correction in love, in frustration too at times, I imagine, but in love, it has to be consistent. It's the same, it's similar, it's not the same, but it's akin to many ways that our language has evolved over time. And if you're still calling something a thing that doesn't reflect the times, then we have to make the choice to harness the courage to be like, no, that's not really how we talk about that now. And that's the way I would say to continue, because it sounds like you're already telling your friend, no, your word ain't right. It wasn't about him not being right. You not right now for using that for using that language. And I think that's probably the most consistent thing we can and should do, is the correction in love, and the correction in the correction that reflects being more humane in our language, right? Being more humane. We can take a sensitive topic like undocumented immigrants, and people still say illegal aliens, right? Like, we don't talk about it like that no more. Ain't nobody an alien. Like, what are we saying right now? So it's the same thing. You like, it almost sounds absurd, but people will still do it, and don't like being challenged or corrected. So that's the courage we have to harness, knowing that there's a good chance we'll get resistance from it. Thanks for that question.
Hi.
Hey.
As somebody who is neurodivergent, I remember, like your son, I was diagnosed with PDD-NOS before I got the autism diagnosis in 1996, and I remember how atrocious those years were, where the people who were supervising me at my school, I guess, performed tests on me to try and, if you are familiar with this term, normalize me to the rest of the community. Like, for example, they would try to rub sandpaper on my skin to get me used to textures, or they would force me to eat ice cream with jimmies that I hated. So I'm just curious if your son went through similar trials as he was growing up while under that diagnosis.
Thank you for sharing that. The short answer is yes. There were certainly ways we attempted to get him to behave in ways that made us more comfortable when it wasn't good for him. So one of the most salient examples that I can think of is when he had limited expressive language, and we tried the picture exchange communication system. I'm showing my age when you hear the word PECS, the picture exchange communication system. He hated it. He hated it. He hated it. And mornings in particular at that point in time in his life, he was eligible for a preschool disabled program, and he was bused. We were living in Palmyra at the time, so he was bused from Palmyra all the way up to Burlington City to go to school. And mornings yielded a lot of dysregulation for him. And I don't know what it was even now. But trying to use the picture exchange communication system was a challenge for him, and we kept forcing it on him until our early intervention specialist said, all right, well, let's shift gears and move from PECS and try signing. And now I'm not proficient in ASL, but I tell you that he seemed way more regulated, calm, ready to take on the day than trying to force him to communicate by way of pictures. It's a game changer. It's a game changer. I'm literally recalling a moment, to your question, I'm literally recalling trying to find ways to communicate with him. And there was a day we were in church, and the environment was loud, right? Music was loud, the spirit of worship was high. You know, we were going to a pretty charismatic church, so folks would dance. I mean, all the things that we know can happen in church. And I was playing with Avery, but I wasn't sure if he was reciprocating, right? Like, is he just letting me do this or? But the moment I knew that I was speaking his language and not trying to make him do something that I liked and made me feel comfortable was when he did this, which means more. I lost it. I was so grateful. I cried like an infant because that was the first time I knew that I was speaking my son's language. And so making the modifications and having the stamina and the humanity to say, hey, maybe I shouldn't do this. Maybe he don't like this. The last thing I'll share with you in making, modifying my approach was with haircuts. The sensory challenges that come as a consequence of haircuts. And I used to want to, once we finally started getting his haircut and go to the barbershop, he hated it. He would cry so intensely. He would try to get out of the barber's chair. And somebody was just like, yo, do we need to get a haircut? Like, does he need a haircut? Is it is having the amount of hair, is it unsanitary? Is it putting him at risk for anything? And all the answers were like, no. So why you keep taking this boy to the barber? Stop. You're harming him. So those are two examples that I can remember and having to adjust so that I could be a better form of help. Thank you for that question.
What kind of things make you feel supported as a father of a neurodiverse child? Like, what does your wife do? Like, what are the kind of things that make you feel more supported? Because I feel like in the world, moms are often recognized, and sometimes we have support that's available and accessible. But like, how as a father do you feel either you get support or you need support?
Yeah, a great question. I feel supported by way of community. Like I was mentioning earlier, the dads group has been really good for me personally. Having a group of guys who know exactly what I'm going through, who I don't have to be explanatory. Like, references. It's very much akin to when you meet somebody who just knows the language and the layout or the landscape of a phenomenon. So I don't have to explain to you, if we have similar taste in music, I don't have to explain to you what this lyric means because you already know. And in that regard, it's very similar with the dad's support group, the virtual support group. I'm privileged because I get to study my curiosities as a researcher. So I acknowledge my privilege in that, but that absolutely helps me. If I don't understand something or have a set of questions, you know what I can do? I can actually do a daggone research study about it, right? And hopefully in doing the research study, I can share it. And this is what happens when people are professors or researchers or things like that. When they share their work, it picks up, right? So when when I write an article, somebody says, hey, are you the guy who does Black fathers of autistic people? Like, yeah, I guess I'm one of them. You know, I ain't the only one, but I'm one of them. So will they, hey, can you come share your insights of the things that you've learned over time? And really just posturing myself as a student and a learner, not like some expert, but being able to investigate and satisfy my curiosities is absolutely helpful. And being able to name some of the things that challenge me, right? I am an anxious person. I be nervous a lot. And being able to acknowledge that and talk about that to a therapist, like, no, my baseline is not 0. My baseline is like 4 on a scale of 10. Like, I walk in at 4. So being able, having the literacy and the language to name that is absolutely helpful as well. So thanks for that question. There's a question right. Oh, let me listen to you.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Thank you so much for your voice this morning. Just want to touch and agree with you about how our neurodivergent children are not broken.
Right.
I also wanted to point out, I have a son on the spectrum, who's 35, and he's almost hyper-social. So I feel like I have to dispel the myth a lot of people assuming that he's not social or anti-social. Sure. And I want to acknowledge Megan Fleming-Buck today. With the Autism Spectrum, the Spectrum Group, she started specifically to create a social network for individuals with autism. Just because they might not make eye contact doesn't mean they don't crave connection with other people. And I just want to share a quick anecdote. I was driving a bunch of my son's friends to the beach one time.
Fun.
And yeah, it was a great privilege to be in the car with them. And they are all on the spectrum, and one by one told me stories of how college did not work for them. One after another, after another, after another. So I applaud your son for making a go and being successful. This is a system that's not necessarily sensitive. Even programs that are supposed to be supportive have let us down. So just wanted to say that too. Even though we've come a long way, we have a long way to go.
I appreciate that. Thank you. Thank you for sharing.
Good morning. I'm Barbara Coppins, and I work with Disability Rights New Jersey. And I want to ask you a question. I don't know if your son is involved in self-advocacy, because we've been looking for younger generation to be involved so they can learn how to be a good role model and how to take the leader. So that's why that we've been working on, because I've been involved in self-advocacy for decades, and we've been looking for younger people to get involved, because it's time for them to learn how to have their own voices and step up to the plate. So, and that's why I wanted to mention that to you. So I don't know, but I am very, very impressed what you had mentioned about your son. I am so impressed, and I know that they can do it. They can show their parents that they can do it. So that's very impressive. And one thing I want to mention about that, May the 1st through the 3rd will be the annual Abilities Expo up in Edison. So I want to mention that to you. So if you have any questions, you can come over to my table, and I'll be more than happy to answer any questions. So thank you.
Thanks so much. I'll make sure I visit your table to get the information.
Yeah.
Thanks so much.
Hi, I'm Megan. I'm the person that Laura just mentioned.
Hey, Megan.
I just want to validate, there's an echo. I just want to validate the church, number one. I really enjoyed all of these talks. It's really nice to see that the language has evolved to neuro-affirming. I feel like really a part. But also, I just want to validate what you said about being curious. Like throughout my life, I run Spectrum, and one of the biggest things that I've always done, I remember the first time I started being curious was in high school. And there was this girl in my class. I'm autistic. I went to Yale and Cherry Hill. And there was this girl in my class, and no one wanted to hang out with her. Her social skills were kind of repellent to other people, but she was obsessed with horses. So I decided I'm just going to sit down and listen to her talk about horses. And I really got to know this person by being curious and understanding what she was interested in, and we made friends, and like she started making more friends because somebody approached her. So I just wanted to validate how important it is, because we're not all the same. So it's just important to be curious and important to understand where people are coming from.
Thank you for sharing that.
Yep.
Yeah.
There we go. My name is Amanda, and Megan and I went to college together. Anyway, I guess this isn't really a question, and probably most of the people in this room, well, I won't make assumptions, but I often find that when folks hear the term spectrum, and especially when you have, like in the official, like the DSM and stuff, you have these levels, 1, 2, 3. Mm-hmm. And even the language of like, support needs and how many support needs that someone may have. I often find that when people hear the word spectrum, they think, okay, well, I guess you're like, somebody is either more autistic or less autistic, right? But I've seen this all over the internet, how instead of imagining a spectrum as in like a line where you have like more severe or less severe, it's a lot more like a pie chart, right? Or like a pizza, where you have like one slice might be, sensory sensitivities. One slice might be, communication. One slice might be like social connections. And I appreciate what somebody over here said about, autistic people. It's not necessarily that autistic people are not social, and in fact, it's more like, at least for some of us, we have this deep desire for community, like you were saying. Sure. That deep desire for community and connection with people, it's just a different way of doing it, right? Mm-hmm. And so I like what you said about like the translation and all that kind of stuff. So, so spectrum is not necessarily just, more or less, or verbal, non-verbal, or speaking, not speaking. But yeah, it's just a lot more nuanced than that. And I think there's more people nowadays who are recognizing their own neurodivergence, who might not have known, maybe they've always felt a little bit different. And now there's language for it. There's language that they've discovered. And it's not, I'm not broken, I'm not messed up, It's, my brain just works in this different way that is also okay. And not just okay, but can also be, I'll use the term blessing, a blessing to other people.
Yeah.
So
I appreciate that. Thank you for sharing it. I'll offer one anecdote quickly. I can remember there was a time that I worked at Brooklyn College in 2014 and 15, and I was working with another professor who was a school psychologist by training. And she talked about a relationship with a neurodivergent person and the tendency that this person had to not make eye contact. And the family of that person being, consistently frustrated with the communication patterns of not giving you eye contact and interpreting that as being disrespectful or being too shy or something like that, and really like kind of pathologizing it. When the person finally said or used the language to share why they did it, he said, "I don't look at you in your face because I'm following your words." So I just like, let's just consider that even if somebody, like, there's the nuance, right? Would have never occurred to me to, when we grew up, I'm born in 75, I'm 50 years old. When we grew up, if we were told you better look the person who's addressing you in their face, and to not do so had all of these meanings. And here was this young man saying, like, I'm following your words, fam. Like, I'm listening to you so intensely that I'm following your words. What? It's a really, really just an insightful perspective and reminder. So.
There we go. All right. Seeing no more questions, I'm going to thank you again so much.
Thank you.
I know we went a little over, but I appreciate your willingness to be in discussion with us. Good to see you again.